I've been doing a lot of videos lately about the Xenos. That's probably because I've been primarily focused on getting that up and running for recent track days. But as you all know, the RX8 was my first track love, and I'm going to continue to go down that path. So I just received a box. You're going to be very familiar with the name, as many people order his under trays, as well as some other products. He does a lot for the Rotary community. I've personally never ordered anything from him, but I have to say, LRB Speed, fantastic effort. This thing, I ordered it. It was in my at my mailbox within 5 to 6 days. And they say give them about 2 weeks. I think this came a lot quicker. So far, packaging looks good. The whole reason I ordered these was because I'm working on, you can see it behind me, another vehicle. So you already know that I crashed my R3 pretty bad. Ever since, it's been leaking water, fumes, anything you can imagine up into the cabin. The chassis in the rear, and obviously this is a completely bonded chassis, unibody if you will, was crushed in. There's holes. I thought, you know what, I won't be satisfied unless I get another body, transfer my parts over. That's not the only thing that will be going on the next rendition of the RX8 track car. But first and foremost, I had to strip it, and because we're going for lightweight and stripping any excess item that I can, I figured I would experiment with these new door panels from LRB Speed. Now, does the car need door panels? Is that extra weight? Does that contradict what I just said? Yes and no. It does contradict what I said. Does it need door panels? Absolutely not. But I do prefer a little bit cleaner of an interior and a cleaner touch on the car overall. So about to unbox these. I'll show you that. The other thing that you can probably see is this RX8 is on a brand new lift, which I'm quite excited about. This is a tuxedo. I was originally going to get a cheap Triumph, and the gentleman at Mechanic Superstore recommended the tuxedo over the Triumph due to the lift capacity, as well as the space in between the two frame rails. So this is actually wider. It can fit larger vehicles, even though it is only, I think, a 9,000 pound capacity limit. But it was maybe 1,000 more, and it came with the wheels in the back that you can see here, 3 drip trays, a center jack, what will we call it? Jack tray, I guess would be the appropriate term, although I did not go with the jack as of yet. Shipped to my door for around $5,000. Now, it seems kind of high. Obviously, a few years ago, pre-COVID, they were much, much cheaper than that. But already, this has been an absolute game changer, especially in terms of stripping a vehicle. Oil changes, the little stuff, night and day difference. The bigger stuff, I've already pulled the motor out of this, the trans, the drivetrain, the PPF, like all those things that are really heavy and difficult to maneuver underneath the car on jack stands. This is make a world of difference. Not only does it make it easier, it makes it fun. So shout out to Mechanic Superstore. They phenomenal customer service. They proactively updated me on every step of the way, pre-shipping, delivery, the whole nine. And they also recommended this tuxedo lift. So far I've had about 3 weeks, maybe a month, and it's been working wonders. So that's what we're looking at. Another 2009 sport model, obviously not an R3, not too much of a difference between the models in the R3. It's mostly just cosmetic appearances. Obviously the foam-filled subframes, but I am going to be converting all of my parts from the R3 and putting them on this vehicle right here. I also, you know what? I'm going to save that secret for later. I have something else coming in the mail for this vehicle too. So if you need any interior parts, any suspension parts, really any parts RX8 related at all, let me know. I've listed tons on Facebook Marketplace, and I literally have 3 vehicles worth of used parts, because I also had a parts car in the past when I crashed the R3. So anything you're looking for, I pretty much have it. Just let me know. On LRB's website, they have the Series 1 and Series 2 front panels listed. You can either order them with the speaker holes or without. Naturally, I went without because I've already removed the entire audio system from this vehicle. Again, that goes to weight savings, and frankly, in all of my cars, even my truck, I never once turn on the radio. It's just not my thing. I'd rather live in peace and quiet for the moments that I'm on the road. And if it's a sports car, I want to hear the car. So the other side of it is you can choose your door pull and specify what color. And I think there were 10 or 15 colors. So great option if you're needing door panel. So let's try to pull one out here real quick. The other thing I wanted to note is that they only specify S1 rear door panels. I ordered them, even though it's an S2. Obviously he makes a lot of these, so I'm a little concerned because it seems like the S2 or the S1s will not fit an S2. Otherwise he would let you know they fit both. But I've had an S1 too, and I think the panels are all the same. If not, it shouldn't be too much modification to get these to work on this car. So we'll see on that front as well. Now I'm told the finish on these, it's kind of like a brushed aluminum finish, is a new finish of LRB Speeds. That's what their website says, and I believe the ones I've seen in the past were slightly different. I don't know if it's with the swirl or something else entirely, but this is it. So as you can see, it's got various cutouts for door handles, pull cards, window buttons, holes for what I assume to be the clips at the bottom. And then just like your factory panel, it's going to curve up over the frame or the windowsill to set these in place. So I kind of want to weigh these and just see. Obviously plastic's pretty light, and the factory ones maybe lighter, maybe not. I'm sure it'd be beneficial to anyone watching this to know that for a fact, especially if they're buying them for the same reasons I am. But overall, these aren't heavy, so I'll definitely weigh them and let somebody know. The savings listed here are based on an old trusty dusty scale, so they're probably not exact. Another thing to note is I will be putting harnesses in this vehicle, which will increase the weight beyond the belt removal. Okay, so what are we working with here? I have 2 of the front door panels. I have 2 of the rear door panels. I have 2 additional panels that I can only assume based on this cutout with these 3 holes are for the window motor. And then I have this pack that I haven't opened yet. It comes with obviously the pull tabs. Yellow is what I ordered for these. 2 additional metal panels, mounting hardware, and what appears to be instructions. I did not expect instructions from, I don't want to say mom and pop, but I think this is a pretty small production and smaller company that he does out of his home. Don't quote me on that. I don't want anyone to be offended if that's not the case. But I'm pretty proud with what I see, and I've only heard good things about LRB Speed, so I highly recommend it so far. We'll get to the install, but it can't be that complicated. The one thing I did not know when dealing with the RX8, and this is having had the front panels off in the past, is that the window motor and unit is very different from most cars, and it's kind of tough. So if you see here, the window's half down because, again, it wasn't working properly when I bought the vehicle. It almost sounded like it was off its track and it was wobbly. Needless to say, that's not the case after taking this apart because the track is very unique. I'll show you why. Got to be gentle because I have a beam above me and I keep whacking the door into it. But so here is the track that the window rides up and down, right? Currently, I have it bolted to the door, but that is not where that bolt actually goes. This track bolts to the inside of the door panel itself. So if you're making a track build and you're removing your door panel and you want windows, you're gonna have to figure that out. You're gonna have to weld a tab or purchase something like I just did from LRB Speed. Here's the motor itself. As you can see, it's almost got like sprung, kind of like throttle cables. And then it pulls and pushes this carrier up this metal track here. So again, without a door panel or something to bolt this motor to, your windows simply aren't going to function. You can go with Lexan, which is obviously great for weight savings, but more expensive. And they're a pain in the ass for everyday use, let's be honest. Or you're gonna have to find a way to remount appropriately that window motor. I know the motors work, so I'm not sure what the issue was with them going up and down, because again, it doesn't appear that they can come off track. So we'll have to figure that out. But if you didn't know, at least on the S2, this panel here is what sits, hopefully you can see that, is what sits behind the door panel that you see on the interior. So everything bolts up, including the speakers, to this door panel, and it bolts to the door itself, and then the door panel bolts over this piece. So essentially, removing the factory door panel and removing that plastic piece, it negates any ability to really mount anything up, which you should somewhat expect with the switches, door handles, etc., when removing the factory interior. But I did not expect that with the physical window track. So shout out to, again, LRB Speed. Obviously, he sold a lot of these. He knows what he's doing. This looks like it should be plug and play. Hopefully it'll fix my window problem and still provide me with the functionality of the window going up and down efficiently. So let's get into unboxing or unwrapping this extra pack. Obviously, I don't want to lose the hardware, but I would like to show the instructions if they're in here, and maybe give you guys an idea if it's worth purchasing for your build. So we got 2 pulls here, possibly for the front. We have another 2 pulls here for the rear, which frankly, based on where this project's headed, those rear doors may not be able to open. Hint, hint. Oh, sweet. Got a cool little, I'm gonna open this up for you actually. Gotta love small businesses, man. Metal cutout of an LRB Speed ornament. I'm sure my wife won't love that, but I'll like it. My wife's awesome, so she doesn't care what goes on the tree. 10% gift card off the next order, which is nice. LRB stickers, gotta love some stickers. I'm not really the sticker guy in the garage on tool benches or anything, but I'm sure I'll find a place for it. Rivets, it looks like. Maybe some other bracketry and nuts and bolts. The 2 panels I discussed, and then yes indeed, it literally has not only instructions, but also pictures on how to mount this stuff up. Step by step. Honestly, I didn't expect that. Like, this is pretty incredible. So hopefully it's as smooth as it looks. I mean, they're just door panels, shouldn't be too difficult, but pretty neat. Figured I'd walk you through this process. YouTube videos help me do everything. It just saves a lot of time versus trying to figure it out yourself. Although, once again, he did include, it appears to be some pretty good instructions. I have read them through. I'll probably refer back to them in this video, because I am the type of guy that typically does not read instructions, and then I end up having to do this multiple times, and it takes 3-4 times the effort. So to save you all some time, here are the tools you're gonna need. 3mm Allen wrench. I have 2 10mm open end box wrenches. They are ratcheting wrenches. I gotta say, if you haven't spent the money on ratcheting wrenches, do yourself a favor and go get some today. It took me a while to come to that conclusion, and they're probably the most used tools in the toolbox for me. 10mm socket, Phillips head screwdriver. I've already had to use this once. My probably $10 grappling stick has a magnet at the end to pick up dropped nuts, since earlier I dropped one in the door. It's also what I do quite frequently. But anyway, biggest thing, just pay attention to the instructions. As you'll notice, there's various sizes here of these set screw studs. And again, this is an area that I would typically mess up because I don't read the instructions. And I would use the wrong stud in the wrong place and have to take everything back off to correct that down the road. So just pay attention to that. The, what do we want to call these? Coupling nuts, I guess. These are all the same size, so you don't have to worry there. It appears that all the nuts are the same size as well. We do have some rivets that I don't think on the S2 I'll have to use. We'll come back to that later. And then we also have, obviously, these plastic, what do you call these? Pop tabs, or anyway, it's not coming to my head. But let's get into it. So with the regulator, I don't know, pane panel, if you will. Yes, sorry for the handprints. They are the same. They're identical, just obviously reversed. So I think either one is acceptable to use. But this is where the regulator is going to mount, right in this hole here. I think this is fairly unique with RX8s. Like, I don't typically see the motor and everything mounted to the factory door panel. It's usually mounted on the skin or the frame of the door. So very interesting, but I believe his name's Landon, and LRB Speed has you a solution should you choose to take off the factory panel. One thing to note, I was initially going to look at potentially gutting the doors wherever I could to save weight, as well as be able to mount these. Here's the thing, after thinking through it, like, it's an RX8, right? It's the horsepower to weight ratio is not very high. Honestly, this is probably not the best car to be driving if you're going for tenths or 3/10 or what have you in your lap times. I think higher horsepower or better power to weight ratio would be more ideal. So unless you're, of course, in some type of racing class that allows these things and you're trying to find every little bit out of that track time, then maybe that's different. But when you gut these doors, every one that I've seen that's done it, the outside skin becomes very wavy. Like, there's just no framework to hold it tight. So because of that, I am going to leave it alone, and I'm just going to continue to count my losses where they are, and that's going to be in terms of the door rails and door skin. I mean, let's be honest. I'm putting these on versus leaving it completely blank. So that's, although it's weight savings, that's weight right there. So anyway, first thing we're going to do is we're going to put a long M6 coupling nut on the studs of the regulator rail. This is the rail and what the window rides on. Then we're going to thread the M6 25 set screw stud into each of them until they bottom out with a washer. That would be the smaller of the two studs, such as these. And then we'll use another one, the longer of the studs, with two of these 10 millimeter nuts to create the door pull on the physical door card itself. All right. So let's grab two of these coupling nuts and put them on the window rail. I don't believe it matters which direction these are facing. Either way should work. I'm gonna grab a ratcheting wrench here just to make sure they're cinched down. One's good. That one's good. And then again, we're gonna grab two of the smaller set screw studs to bottom out into these coupling nuts with a 3 millimeter Allen head key. Make sure those are tight. All good. Grab two washers here and slip them over the face of those set screws. And then that is when we are going to need to grab our regulator panel. And you can see that I've already once attempted this, which means I made a mistake somewhere along the way. But we are going to grab one of the longer set screws and two of these nuts, which will help hold it in place. One thing to note when you're doing this is it does say that you're gonna have the set screw protrude past the rear nut here on the inside of the panel a few millimeters, so that 3/4 of an inch is sticking out towards you. Just keep that in mind. I do have a measuring tape to ensure that that's accurate, but that is gonna be for, I hope my hands aren't too dirty, for these door pulls to go on the front side of the door panel. So make sure the Allen head face is facing you, should you need to make an adjustment in the future. But if we know it needs to protrude a few millimeters out the back side, and get that placed before we tighten everything down. And what I'm going to do is measure this probably right away here. And we're looking for 3/4 of an inch, which it appears that's exactly what we got. What are the odds that that happened the first time? Not bad. So the curvature is going to be facing outside of the door, and the physical motor, the window motor, bolts in up to this top left corner. And as you can see, I put all of these screws back in the door. I used to use baggies and would bag and label everything, but inevitably I would always forget where things go back. So it just works better for me to put the screws, no matter what I take apart, even on the motor, put the screws back in their place. That way I can always find them when I need them. So we're mounting here and here. It looks like here. All right, so we're gonna need at least one of these push nuts. That separates. And we're going to line this up. Put these nuts on first just to hold this rail, and then we'll set the panel in where it's supposed to go. And remember, these are the factory nuts that came off of the original rail itself. So we're reusing some of this hardware. If you're taking your stock panels off before you do this, make sure you save that stuff. If not, I'm happy to get you a thread pitch so that you can buy new nuts and bolts if needed. No big deal. This push pin is going to go to this top left corner. It's because there was no nut here from the original panel. Might have been one of these, I don't recall, but this one obviously came out cleanly. Just going to put that in place for now to hold it. I have to loosen that up in a minute once we get everything lined up, but before I tighten everything completely, I want to make sure this motor is in the right place. All right, so to put the back side where the cable goes for the window regulator, it does have for these 3 plastic little tabs. He already has cutouts for you to insert this into the panel and lock it in place. Just keep in mind there's, it's barely latching onto the panel, and the screw holes are slightly offset, so I'm probably going to pull it back a hair. It does still cover the panel, so that is still in its proper location. And then we'll want to match this star pattern up with the star and the bolt holes of the cable pull. So perfect. Let's see if we can get a screw in just to hold everything in place. So that one, put it in. Second slide there. Put it in. I'll tell you, doing this stuff on camera, you feel dumb. Can't even grip the tool appropriately. I don't know what words are coming out of my mouth half the time. It's a very different experience. So that's tight. That's tight. That's tight. Push this pop nut in. That's good. Remember, these screws that are for the motor itself go into plastic threads, so don't do what I do and over tighten it, because I'm the king of that. I'll rip those right out. All right, and what's interesting is this hole for the top regulator rail does have some adjustability. The bottom one does not, so I think you just lock it in place. That appears in place correctly. So this is for the door lock. In, push lock goes into the panel. Good there. We already have our window motor hooked up. I might just cut this. Can I just cut this? Cut it and tape it? Speaker wires. This car will never see speakers again. What would you do? We're cutting it. Yeah, we're cutting it. Don't do what I do. Do the right thing. But I'm cutting it. The appropriate way would probably be to then tape each one of these off. So I'll leave a little bit hanging over here. And I need tape. All right, so I'm gonna tape up the wires that I just cut the ends off. I feel like that's probably the right way to approach this versus the wrong way, especially if I'm making a video about it. There we go. All right, next up, we gotta get these switches off to put into these door panels. So I'm not, once again, not gonna use a drill. It's all plastic and we don't wanna break it. So let's do this by hand, do it the right way, and do it once. All right, so we got the switches off. The two switches off, held in by, it looks like 4 screws from the factory trim clip. We're gonna put them in the door panel. We did provide 4 M4 screws, as well as some M4 nuts. We do need a 7mm socket or wrench to cinch down the nuts. We want to be very, very careful. The last thing you want to do is break off the plastic tabs. I've done that in the past as well. So the one thing I will say is I may be finally hitting a state of maturity because I'm actually thinking these things. So, all right. Anyway, let's grab our panel here. Let's tilt it up on its side. We're gonna do the top window switch first. Or excuse me, top door lock first. Shove that through the hole. There we go. Shove it through the hole from the front side. And then we're gonna put an M4 screw through the top, as well as a lock nut on the back. Put an M4 screw on the bottom, as well as a lock nut on the back. There we go. Our 3mm Allen head, and then our 7mm socket, and we're going to tighten her down gently, very gently. Remember, it's plastic. Okay, that's tight. I didn't hear any plastic break, so that's a good sign. That's good. Now we'll do the other switch, same thing, push it in through the front side. This would be the window switch. Let's make sure we're going the right direction here. I believe that is correct. I don't know if you can see on camera, this thing was really tight to get in, which I like. It's obviously a good fit and finish. You don't want it a big hole around this switch to appear, but I do have a slight gap here. I don't think there's anything I could do differently. I don't know. I'm not gonna say it's a design flaw or anything because he's obviously made and sold a bunch of these. It may be something I'm doing wrong, but to avoid breaking my switch, I think I'm gonna build up the metal with some washers and approach it that way. All right, so as you probably saw, I just had a fairly difficult time getting the window switch into the door panel. Again, I like that it's tight. That's obviously gonna be a good fit, but it wasn't sitting flush. I originally was gonna try to use some tiny washers, which would work, but I think they'd be kind of ugly. What I realized was this particular switch, ooh, good job camera, has this plastic bracing right here that's preventing it from sitting flush. So I am gonna change plans and I'm gonna cut straight down and take out this little triangle and see if that doesn't fix my problem. Because the way these door panels are made, if this is flush bolted tight, obviously this is flush bolted tight, I don't think we will need that reinforcement. Just be sure not to over tighten the screw. And currently this one's in good shape. There's no cracks or anything with it. So, all right, if you can see this, it was actually easier just shaving it with a Dremel. Took 2 seconds versus the razor blade, which probably would have slipped and stabbed myself. Still very strong, and I'm gonna shove it in this door panel and see what happens here. See if I can get a good visual on it for you. The easiest way I found was to shove the bottom in first and make sure that's flush, and then kind of wiggle it back and forth to get the top side in. If you try to push it in square, it does not want to fit in. Again, it is super snug. So slide in the bottom a hair and then push in the top, and the whole thing will just fall into place. And if you can see now, whoop, there is zero gap where that screw hole goes through. What you're seeing there is the light of the main hole itself. So definitely shaving that plastic made a huge improvement to how flush this sits. And frankly, I think it's going to be stronger because of it, because that air gap would have created a pressure point on the plastic itself. So just my tip, shave your switch down, you'll have no problem. I'm not sure where the original footage went for this video, but you'll need to take the factory weather stripping off of your original door panel, which is held on by about 6 or 7 bent tabs of metal. Very simple job with some small needle nose pliers. Okay, it looks like she's on there pretty well. I've yet to put in the pop clips on the bottom here. What I was gonna say is this top edge, it's not as easy as it seems. I've even, if you can see here, scratched this up fairly good from the handle. This doesn't really have any sharp edges, but that didn't stop it from scratching this quite a bit. There's a few different ways that I can fix that. I'm thinking about covering this anyway with, again, either suede, paint, I don't know, powder coat, we'll see. But one thing I like to use on pretty much anything with a sharp edge or anything that could rattle is this U-shaped edge trim stuff. I don't know if I've used this particular brand. You can get it off Amazon pretty cheap. This came from O'Reilly's across the street. But what I'm gonna do is run it all the way around the outside edge, just so, you know, I get it's a race car, but I like to have some civility here, just so it's not sitting there doing this the whole time. Yes, it'll have pop clips. Maybe that holds them tight enough, but I'd rather have that rubber cushion in between to mitigate the noise. So let me show you one other thing, since I have that one on, because I did wrestle with that door panel quite a bit. And the issue was not the entire edge here, but definitely the places where it's double edged, it was catching on this back piece. So I just took some needle nose pliers and then slightly bent. Right in here is where it was hanging up. So it had to be this back piece here. Slightly bent right here just to allow it to sink in, because without that, it was not budging for some reason. I thought I could flex it and get it to slide down, but it just wouldn't do it. So hopefully the seal is still tight enough that there's not any rattle and that it firmly seals against the windshield. But if you're having trouble, that's probably where I would start. So pro tip. There you go. Door panel 1 is complete. I really like having that U-shaped edge trim on there. I think it just kind of finishes it off nicely, whether I eventually cover this, paint it, or not. I love the yellow door card, or excuse me, door pull. It pops, and everything on my track car is also yellow. I have an OMP steering wheel, OMP seats. I believe OMP harnesses as well, but yeah, overall so good. A few minor snags. Not all of these perfectly lined up. I don't think it's necessarily an issue with the door panel itself. Could be the door. It could be the way I have it positioned, but I jimmied it a little. I used a wooden handle to push the pins in while kind of pressing on the aluminum itself, and everything went in nice and snug. So I think we're all good. No rattles, no free play. Everything seems tight, and shout out to LRB. Now on to the passenger door. So the rear door panel is going to be a lot more straightforward. I've already test fit it just to be sure that everything lined up appropriately. It does reuse the plastic window surround on the rear door. The leading edge also folds into what they call the plastic webbing here, so it does clip in. And then it's essentially just putting in, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4 of those push pins. One thing I did do actually is I zip tied the door sensor to the inside of the door. I don't know how the factory ECU would react if I unclip that entirely. So I'm just leaving that there for now, just so it thinks the door is closed at all times. I have 2 zip ties on the physical sensor holding down the pin that lets it know that the door is closed. It comes from this slot here, and the reason I did that was so that the panel would fit closer to the physical door skin or door frame, versus it had a fairly sizable gap with that plastic clip there originally. It did take from this side, it did take a T27 or T30, I'm not sure exactly which one I had, Torx bit, just like these, to get that out. But yeah, maybe one day I remove that. Maybe somebody already has the answer, whether or not that's needed. Maybe one day I get Mazda or Mazda Edit or Versatune and rework the stock ECU. But the plan for this car is going to be a little different. So it may end up going with an aftermarket ECU anyway. So let me get this on. Again, you just hook it over the top. Let it sit flush against the door itself. Remember, I got rid of the speakers, so I don't have the door bulge for the belt or speakers that this kit could come with. And we'll go from there. I believe that's it. And there you go. There's the final product of the rear door. I gotta say, conceptually, it's far easier than the front. However, it did take a bit of muscling and pressing to get everything to align correctly. So, yeah, I think I pulled a muscle, but that tends to happen a little more frequently post the age of 35 or so, which is exactly where I sit. So anyway, looking good. I did modify the door a hair, which I will show you here in just a sec. So on the other side, I cut this little tab that hangs below the door hook. If I remember correctly, something from the original seatbelt attached to that area, the bracketry, I believe, don't quote me on that. But by cutting this, it allowed the door panel to sit a little tighter to the overall door with less of a gap. I also moved the door actuator, or what do we want to call it, sensor, if you will. So that's what I'm gonna do. Cut this, remove this, put the door panel on, we'll be good to go. So let's cut. There we go. Also, does anyone else have the same issue I do in terms of even the smallest of jobs requiring literally every single tool you own being out? It's absolutely ridiculous. I apparently am a messy worker that cannot operate on just the tools that are listed. But overall, it looks good. I like the trim around the edge. I like the push pin look. Very, very clean. They seem very, very sturdy. No rattling, no flexing. This one has a little bit. I think it's primarily the glass, but quite pleased.